and welcome to Two Guys on Politics, Season 2, Episode 4, August 17, 2023. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And we have a great guest that I want to introduce, Burt Odelson, founding partner of Odelson, Murphey, Frazier McGrath. He started the firm in 1972 and has since earned a well-earned reputation as a leading expert in governmental and election law. He went to Daley College, University of Illinois at Chicago, and he got his Juris Doctorate JD degree from IIT Chicago-Kent Law School. Burt, welcome to the program.
Always glad to be with such a distinguished host, always.
So we're not taking much of a serious topic today. We're going to do something light. So 4 indictments. First time ever a president has ever been criminally indicted. I don't think that's ever happened, but there are 4 of them. One for bookkeeping fraud, one for national security documents, one for the January 6th insurrection or protest, depending on your politics, and one for Georgia election subversion. How serious are those, Burt? I mean, 4 indictments?
Yeah, just take I want to make a disclaimer here. I didn't vote for Trump the first time. I didn't vote for Trump the second time. I will not vote for him if he ever runs again. I think he is a reprehensible character. I say that because I'm going to say some things on this program that might lead people to mistakenly think I'm a supporter. Okay, Ray, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. Listen, we have to do that today because you say one thing and the media will twist it around. And pretty soon, you know, they might even indict you for the January 6th thing had you not issued that disclaimer the way things are going. Burt, I know these are serious, but of all the 4 indictments, which one do you think is the most serious, that has the most evidence that we can surmise? Because I haven't seen the evidence, just a lot of accusations.
Well, that's I'll be a lawyer for a second. That's a very difficult question to answer because they all have sufficient evidence. Let's say these people who brought the indictments didn't bring them willy-nilly. You got to have evidence in order to convince a grand jury, which doesn't take a lot to convince a grand jury to bring in an indictment. But you don't go to the grand jury unless you have everything locked up in your pocket. That's why it takes the Fed so long to indict, as we've seen here in Chicago. Some of these cases go, 2-3 years before an indictment comes. Each one of these cases has, as you said, Ray, sufficient evidence. Whether one is better than another, it'll certainly play out. Serious, though. The first, if I could just take them slowly, the first one was kind of a funny one. If you want the, hush money, the president of the United States, affairs, paying lawyers off, paying whatever you call his girlfriend, paying her. It's kind of a fun one. He still was indicted by a federal grand jury for 34 counts of falsifying business records. So that's nothing, light. It's falsifying business records.
And this is the Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen case where he allegedly tried to, silence her with some money and denied it. But from what I understand, they said that they have to show that the defendant had an intent to commit, aid, or conceal the crime.
Yeah,
that seems to me a tough thing to do, but it's weird enough where
it is weird enough, and you got to dig deep a little bit and really read these to know that it's not just falsifying business records. There's counts in there: conspiracy to obstruct justice, which is not real hard to prove, a scheme to conceal, false statements. There's a lot bundled up in that federal indictment. It's in New York, jury pools being where jury pools are. I'd say I kind of chuckled when it first came out, but after I dug deep in preparation really for this show, Ray, I'd say he's got some problems there. I really do. Will he get time? I know, Bill, what do you think?
I think that is the least significant of the 4 cases that we are going to talk about. And based upon what I've read, what I've seen on TV, heard on the radio, most people think that's a relatively frivolous case. And all it did was allow him to raise more money for his legal defense or his campaign, and his percentage of the Republican primary vote went up. So I don't really put too much stock into that case. And it seems to me that most commentators feel exactly the same way, whether they be liberal, progressive, or conservative.
Yeah, and that is the general thing, but I can tell you, digging down into it, there's more there than meets the the Stormy Daniels and the hurrah thing, that kind of lightens the whole load. But there's some burdens in there that I think that they'll be able to prove. What does that mean when they prove it? I'm not sure, but you're right. I agree with you. That's the least of the four indictments.
And the second one's the national security documents, right?
Now that that was, I thought, incredibly serious, with tremendous evidence. We saw it on TV. We still see the boxes in his house, and it's not just him. There's co-conspirators in here. And what the federal government does, and this is no surprise, they'll indict a bunch of people, and then they'll turn people to give them, we're not gonna go forward, but you got to talk. We're seeing it live now in the what's his name, Madigan's chief of staff, his case,
Tim Mapes.
Seeing it right before your eyes, with people testifying who got letters that the government's not coming against them. I think that's going to happen in this election interference indictment. And I think there's going to be findings of guilty here. Maybe not because he kept the document, but there's other, again, underlying charges here. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, again, a scheme to conceal, and they have recordings, they got pictures. So that is a very important one for our national security. I don't know how much Bill got when he was in Congress as far as being let in on these documents in national security, but we have to keep some things close to the vest, not put them in your washroom or
I agree with you on this, Burt. No, I didn't get much of that information, but I agree with you that this case is significant legally, politically. His followers and the people that support him are going to say, so he took home a couple of documents. He could read these documents. He could look at them legally when he was president. Why couldn't he do it, after he was president? So that's, politically, it's going to reinforce the support of many of his followers, right?
Well, I was going to say that really the biggest criticism is that, we saw in November of last year when they said and confirmed that, President Biden's personal attorneys found classified documents dating to when Joe Biden was vice president. Many were top secret, sensitive, information locked in a closet, packed up in his home and in his garage or his car or whatever. To me, the issue is hypocrisy. Hillary Clinton can have all those government emails on a server. And I'm not saying should she have been prosecuted. I'm saying that if you hated somebody enough on an issue like this, you could prosecute them and you could make a strong case. And you can say they intentionally took it because that he was going to give it to the Russians or the Chinese. To me, the crime is, what were you going to do with that? Not that you took them home, because it seems like everybody has taken these documents home and it's really been kind of loose, whether they're emails or documents.
So here's the difference, of course, when they found Biden stuff, he turned it over, come on, go get it. Again, you got to dig deeper in these indictments. There's a count for making false statements, for false representations, which he did. I don't have any, and what I have, I allowed myself to have. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, scheme to conceal, altering, destroying, mutilating, or concealing a document. I mean, there's other stuff going on here.
Well, that's true, but Trump, if I remember the interviews, Trump said, yeah, I took these because I declassified them. That was his claim. or I believed I declassified them. Now, listen, this is the fourth one is the one where I think they've really eliminated all the boundaries for prosecution. But
Well,
this one seems like you could make the case against anybody. They may have believed it. They show that he had the documents? Do they have to prove that he intentionally took it to do something with it? Is that something they have to prove, do you think?
no, they don't.
So
And
what's
again,
the crime?
the crime is there's a crime in the federal statute saying you can't take top secret documents out of the white, number one, and number two, you can't conceal it. And again, all the facts, Ray, haven't come out, but some of the facts have that the government tried to get these documents.
Right.
They tried, and he said, no
So-
way.
So the others took the documents. Maybe they didn't conceal it. Maybe they tried to explain why they had the documents, and critics might say that explanation is concealment. That's the thing that kind of bothers me about that case. But anyway, that's the second one. We got the third one, which has really gotten a lot of attention. Obviously, the January 6th election subversion.
Election interference indictment. That's kind of what we're calling it. And let me just say on the side,
Sure.
this is a lawyer's delight. I wish I was part of the team down. Holy cow, you could work 24 hours a day. Make
Exactly.
$1,000. Oh, how many lawyers do you think this guy has? I mean, yeah. Whenever you have an indictment like this, you lawyer up and you have 2 or 3 firms, you got 6 lawyers, but holy crap. I mean, I know he's got a lot of money, but
Didn't we read something where he had to borrow $60 million to cover all the different lawsuits that he was dealing with? It was just a huge amount of money.
I haven't heard that.
yeah, and the other thing, which we'll get to in the Fulton County indictment, I understand when you have a special counsel like Jack Smith, all of his time goes into this election interference indictment, or you have these Manhattan district attorney who had this, we'll call it the little hush money indictment. But when we get to Fulton County, you got the prosecutor there, our state's attorney working 2.5 years on this case. What the hell else is going on down there? And I just read an article the other day that they're complaining that there's murders going on in Fulton County that have not been attended to because the U.S. attorney, the state attorney is so wrapped up in this case. And when I read, I see why. But before we get to that, I must tell you that Fulton County indictment is tied into special counsel Jack Smith's third election interference indictment. It's kind of related, except the federal indictment goes to Trump and a few co-conspirators to defraud the United States, to obstruct an official proceeding, which he tried to do, conspiracy against voters' rights. So that is somewhat confined under 4 different indictments.
And when you say Fulton County state's attorney, you're talking about the 4th indictment, really,
Yes,
right? Georgia. But
yes.
and I just want listeners to know that that's separate from not separate, but they're all kind of all these are intertwined. But the 4th indictment is the one in Georgia, right? And the first 3 are national federal indictments, correct?
Correct. Absolutely correct. Except the 4th one, which we'll talk about in just a second, is more involved than the other 3 put together, quite frankly.
Right.
Because we'll get to that, but the election interference indictment brought by Jack Smith, I think is maybe the most serious because of the absolute proof that we all have seen. And you're going to have testimony from the former Vice President of the United States and the former Attorney General of the United States to confirm these charges. How interesting is that?
Well, they said you lost the election. He didn't want to believe it. He said, no, I won the election. And I heard his speech. And like Bill said earlier, in all fairness, at full disclosure, I voted for Trump the first time. I voted for Biden the second time. I don't know who I'm going to vote for the next time because I'm disappointed in both. I think Trump is wacky. He had some good things there. But with Trump, it seems like that they're going after him, that they're twisting his words. I heard his speech. He told them go to the Capitol and protest peacefully. Don't they have to show evidence where he said, Jack or Ray or Mario, I want violence. I want you to break that place up,
Right,
bully
he hasn't
them.
been indicted for anything that has to do with January 6th. There's not one of these indictments cover January 6th that he may have motivated, that group of people to go up and attack the Capitol. So that, that doesn't make any difference.
Well, no, it does. It says that when you read it, it says that he's charged with 4 criminal counts because he sought to subvert American democracy by trying to overturn the 2020 election.
Yeah,
and they cite the January 6th event as like a foundation of that.
Bill's right on that one. They're not focusing on the event. That's the hoopla.
Right.
The real focus there is the calls that Giuliani made and others made to the vice president, to members of the Senate, to members of Congress, to slow the Electoral College count.
So January 6th is just like Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, it's a show.
It's a show. So you're saying it was all the behind the scenes things that were done to slow the counting process. Is that illegal to try to slow the process?
There's a law, and he's indicted for conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. I mean, you can't get more official than counting the frickin' Electoral College votes and declaring the president. I don't know anything more official than that.
And you know better than anybody, Burt, when they tried to obstruct the Al Gore election and George W. Bush with the hanging Chad, they blocked the counting. They did everything. I do not recall anybody being indicted or charged in that instance where they tried to block the counting of an election. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're wrong, because Bush had the good sense to hire a really good lawyer from Chicago.
that was you. You did a great job.
Talk about Chads and how and the United States Supreme Court said we got to stop the recount because there's nothing in place to give everybody the right due process of a vote. And that's kind of plays into here too, because the last indictment in the election interference indictment is a conspiracy against voters' rights. Think about it. We want to take fake electoral college people and put them in place to say that Trump really won in New Mexico versus the true electoral college voters who represent the true count. So you're displacing all those voters who voted for Biden and elected their electors to go to the Electoral College. So
I thought that Trump's people did that only in the event that he managed to overturn several counts in various states. Now here, there have been in other presidential elections where there have been 2 sets of delegates sent to Washington, D.C. It turns out in both cases, neither one of them, were counted. But it seems to me that you can argue that, well, we were putting these delegates together simply in the event we managed to persuade people that the election, was not given to Biden. Trump should have won it because here is the evidence. That's number one. Number two, answer this question for me. If he contends that he did not believe or know that he lost the election, and he had people advising him, yes, he had lost, but he also had countless people advising him he had won. So if in his mind he believed that he had won, didn't he have an opportunity, a right to pursue a redress of grievances here?
Yes, the answer is yes. And he did so over 60 times in lawsuits across the country. Over 60 times. He lost every single one of them. So yes, there is a procedure there, and we know that in Illinois. It's called discovery recount, Yeah, it's in the books, and it's in the books in every state. So yes, he did have a procedure. However, his lieutenants didn't follow. Well, some of them did follow that procedure and tried to overturn the votes, but had no evidence, which is why they lost. But other lieutenants like Giuliani and John Eastman and others that had been indicted went right to the plot of putting in fake electors and convincing Pence to accept those fake electors versus the real electors who got elected. And they did that contrary to any legal documents, evidence, court decisions. They just had this plot, and you will see, Bill and Ray, you will see as the evidence unfolds that there was a effort to force Pence to accept these electors and slow the process down. They got recordings, they got evidence.
Who do they have on tape on this?
Giuliani.
Oh, okay.
Is he making any sense?
As much sense as Giuliani makes these days.
I was going to say. But before we get to the Georgia election subversion, I mean, with all this stuff happening, we're going to have a trial. I remember the Watergate trial, sitting and watching it every day after school for a year. This isn't going to go on a year, is it? This sounds like it's going to be very fast and quick.
No, it's not. It's the Stormy Daniels one. We're all going to be glued to the set watching to see if we see Stormy. But aside from that, I think that one will go fairly quick. And the documents one, fairly quick, 2-3 weeks. Okay. But not the
subversion.
Yeah, the election interference indictment is not going to go slowly. It's going to have a lot of testimony, a lot of documents. And like I said, you're going to have the vice president, the former vice president, and former attorney general appointed by the
Trump's people.
And you're going to have some of these folks are going to turn. They're going to get a letter from the government saying you're not a target. We're not going after you. And they're going to testify as to the truth. And that's going to sink them. You'll see. Now, the question, of course, you're going to ask, I'll head you off. What if he becomes president while this is all going on, or he's found guilty? Can he wave the magic wand?
Just address the first three on that question. Can he pardon himself, right? Just on the first three. Can he do that?
I don't know. I mean, I got to tell you, as a lawyer, I haven't really studied it. I don't have time. No one's paying me to study that right now. So I don't know. I mean, at first blush, I'd say maybe it doesn't say you can't pardon yourself. It says you have a right to pardon. That's why the fourth one becomes very interesting.
Which is why it's different than the other three then, right? Tell us about the fourth one and why is it different?
I think the fourth one is much more political than the first three. She worked on it for 2.5 years. Right. She raised money off of it. She was talking 2 years ago about an indictment forthcoming. She has utilized this case to bring in a lot of money for her campaign, to get a lot of exposure. If she runs for election and loses, she can always go on CNN or MSNBC as a political consultant, believe me.
We might let her on our podcast, but this is the Georgia election subversion one that we just saw announced. Tell us about that one, Burt.
Yeah. I like to just call it the Fulton County indictment. It's a lot easier because it's all in Fulton County, Georgia, and everything Bill said is exactly correct, except there's 18 other people indicted aside from Trump.
Yeah,
it's still an indictment. You still have to plead not guilty. They're going to take their pictures. They're going to take their fingerprints. They got to have lawyers. They're going to file motions. All 18 of these folks are not going to trial. There's going to be deals made. There's going to be letters given by the state's attorney there saying we won't go forward if you come forward and tell the truth. You're going to see all sorts of that. So I think that was really smart strategy of her indicting all of these people because they all have some type of involvement. And the overall, it's really interesting to me as a lawyer because it's civil RICO. And people, and I had to go and look up the definitions again because we don't get RICO every day. RICO was commonly used in the 70s.
For the mob.
For the mob, criminal racketeering scheme. But in the 70s, the Congress passed the civil RICO. Same theory. A group of people get together to commit illegal acts, conspire to commit legal acts. That's called racketeering. And again, some of us old guys think about racketeering as gambling and murder and all that. And that's what originally RICO was made for. But RICO, civil RICO, has been used successfully in a number of instances in state court and federal court to wherever there's a pattern of illegal activity like bribery, extortion, fraud, carried out as part of an enterprise. Remember that word, enterprise, that like a crime syndicate. An enterprise is a group of individuals that is owned or controlled by those engaged in the illegal activity. So that's you're going to hear that as we get more into the racketeering civil RICO charge. Hard to prove. In this case, though, because there's so many people with their hands in the kitty, maybe not so hard to prove because they're going to turn on each other. You'll see. And they're all going to turn towards the big guy with the bad
That
team.
was always a pattern by the FBI and Justice Department to get the mob. They
Correct.
wanted to get the head guy, but he didn't pull the trigger. So they'd find a soldier who they could finally tie with some evidence to a killing, and then they'd associate him with the entire organization and convict 10 or 15 people, and then offer them one or two of them to testify against John Gotti or whoever.
Correct. Exactly how it was used. And it's been used successfully civilly also. And remember, she expanded the enterprise that she talks about, operated, and look, get this, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C., where all of these, or some of these 18 folks were at or talked to officials and conspired to, in some cases, change the results of the election, or as the famous one that we've heard over and over again, Trump calling the Secretary of State in Georgia and saying, find me 11,000 votes. Now, if Bill Lipinski or Ray Hanania or Burt Odelson made a call to the governor or the Secretary of State and find me the votes, guess who would be at our doors with handcuffs on? Are you kidding me? There are laws against that.
He was just making sure that he actually lost Georgia. He wanted the Secretary of State to double check it out to see. He didn't tell him to, steal them. He just find them. They're probably, they miscounted them.
Yeah. Well, there's ways to go about doing that, and he didn't go about that. He just told them to count. And there's more that we don't know that I think from reading the indictments themselves. And Ray, by the way, I did a lot of homework for this, so
you did. You're helping us a lot to understand it. Believe me.
Ray's got a check for you. Look.
So later, that's good. Legitimate.
Trump may call you up after this, or maybe even the Fulton County State's Attorney.
She don't need.
We found some hanging chads.
Yeah. But 41 counts is a lot of counts. When you read them, they make sense. It's like you should read the indictment. It's like a story. It's kind of like a short novel. It's kind of fun, to tell you the truth, because in my mind, I'm thinking, how is she going to prove all these? How is she going to link Meadows? Mark Meadows, here's a good one. Chief of Staff, do you think he's going to go to jail for a minute? He's doing this as soon as they give him a letter. Are you kidding? And he had an insight to everything, almost everything, being the Chief of Staff. And he was the vehicle, kind of like what we're seeing in going on now. With the Madigan trio, they're going to the vehicle, the source. That's why you got a couple of former state reps, singing.
Now tell us about some of the few little points, and we're getting close to the end here because we know you're on a time limit. But
that's right.
I saw something where they told Trump Trump's lawyer said he can't share the evidence. He can't talk publicly about the evidence.
Yeah.
Is that true? And
yeah,
is
that's
there
true.
is there something wrong with that when
Yes
you're
and no.
being accused
No.
of something?
No. They can't publicly try they can publicly try their case on politics, like you said, but evidence that the defendants, Trump's lawyers, have subpoenaed from the government that the
Right.
government is going to use at the trial. Many times there's a order by the judge that can't be used outside and try your
Well,
case.
specific stuff, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you have a defendant and you're defending him, you want to know what the charges are and the evidence so you can defend them.
Correct.
And then a few things might be so sensitive that you don't want it to be public, but all of the stuff?
Not all the stuff. That's not. I haven't read that, but it's not as far reaching. It can't be.
Okay.
It can't be. But one other point before we wrap up, every defendant has a right to due process of law and to be able to present their case. And this is going to take time, and you're going to hear them in Fulton County, especially, say it took her 2.5 years to put this together. We want equal time to put up a defense. And I'll tell you, as a judge, it's hard not to give him almost as much time as he needs to defend himself. Otherwise, the government is violating his due process to defend himself. And we're all innocent until proven guilty. So you're going to hear that in each one of these cases. He wants to extend it out, use it as a political platform, raise money, get elected, pardon himself from at least the other three, and then politically destroy her in Fulton County so she goes away. That's the strategy I would be using if I was his lawyer.
If he gets elected president, and even if he is convicted on all four of these, 3 of them we agree upon, he can probably pardon himself. Okay. Now, he can't do so on the Georgia case. That's a state case. But what he can do once he gets into office is, if the trial on the Georgia case runs long enough, he can ask for a stay because he is president of the United States. And that would give him another 4 years out, another 4 years to see if he could figure out a way to get rid of her and to get rid of that case.
Just the words "get rid of" are going to end up as part of an indictment someplace, because they don't take things the way they're intent anymore. They put more meaning behind it.
But Bill is right. I think that would be the strategy I would use too. Because if he gets into office and he pardons himself on any convictions, who's going to contest that? You're going to go to the Supreme Court? Well, look who's sitting in the Supreme Court. They're going to say, of course he can,
Is there,
free
Burt,
himself.
is there a possibility? That's a good point. I was going to ask you that. Let's just say that he gets convicted in all 4. They take it, they fight it, goes all the way to the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that he had tremendous influence in forging. Is there a chance the Supreme Court could throw everything out and reverse the convictions?
No, they not reverse the convictions, but uphold his right to pardon himself. That's what I see, because you'll hear a lot of constitutional experts debate whether someone can pardon themselves or not. And I don't even want to give you an answer. I don't know, to tell you the truth. It's never happened. Never freaking happened. So, but the United States Supreme Court can uphold him pardoning himself. I do, and I think most legal experts will agree that they can do that. Now, as far as the Georgia case goes, that would go to the Georgia Supreme Court, and then on some constitutional grounds, they could get it to the United States Supreme Court. And could they reverse that? Yep, they sure could. So his game is to play this out, win the election. That's his game, for sure.
Let me ask you, Burt, one last question. I think that this is very, very bad for this country, all the indictments on a former president. Many people agree with me on that. What is your position on it?
I think you're absolutely right. It's a black mark that we're going to have way past you and me and Ray, Bill. It's indicting, and other countries have had some problems like this. I mean, the Prime Minister of Israel is under indictment right now. you know, so
And he's
we're
getting rid of the judicial system,
right.
basically.
That's right. And then be careful what Trump may do if he gets to be president again. So it's not unprecedented that leaders get indicted, but for us it is. I mean, we're the United States of America. Bill Lipinski, you're right on. This is a real
All right.
on us, real blemish.
All right. We got to let Burt go because I know that you got a tough schedule, but Burt, we really appreciate you joining us to talk to us. And I think it was very informative. I did learn a lot from one of the top lawyers in the country who's been involved in this at a national level. So
Until next time, Bill Lipinski, a fellow American.
all right. And Burt, thank you again for joining us.
Yes.
We will be back next week with another podcast of Two Guys on Politics. And who knows, we're going to have to bring Burt back because 4 cases like this are always going to be dominating the news, bigger than Watergate, bigger than any other political law case that we've ever seen. Burt, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bill, it was informative, wasn't it? Did it change your mind at all in terms of what you heard from Burt?
No,
did it influence your attitude at all?
No, not really, because I mean, I've read a great deal about all 4 of these cases, and I do believe I know what I'm talking about. And Burt, certainly knows what he's talking about. I hate to see it happen because I think it's terrible for the country. But people, say they want justice, they want justice. Well, I understand that. But I just hope with the divide we already have in this country, that this doesn't tear us further apart. Because I believe that he will be convicted, on some of these charges. He may be convicted on all of these charges.
Yes.
And I think he will drag it out to the point where he is going to run for election again. And if he wins, it's going to be terrible for this country. He'll pardon himself in the 3 he can. He'll get a stay in the 4th one. And Lord only knows what he will do as president for 4 years.
And I know my feeling has always been that the media is going to martyr this guy. It's going to take the focus off of these specifics of these charges. And his supporters are going to put him back in the office. I blame them as much as I blame him. I think that the country, I agree with both of you, the country's in a mess. This doesn't help us. The polarization, the division in this country makes us look weak and confused and unfocused. We're at our most vulnerable state as a nation than we've ever have been since 1776, since the 1770s. And that has to be tragic. Anyway, I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And we'll be back with another Two Guys on Politics next week. Thank you for joining us.